Today we're going to discuss Rawls and his political philosophy. The first part of it is the original position argument, and he claims that when people develop a political philosophy, they often promote their own interests. His examples were when the rich argue for policies that they're going to argue for policies that favor the rich people. When poor people argue for policies, they're going to argue for policies that favor poor people. And when any religious sect argues for policies, they're going to argue for policies that reflect their own religious sects. His solution to the problem is the veil of ignorance. So his argument is that if we take ourselves and we forget everything we know about ourselves and don't assume anything, and we can look at a problem from an unbiased point of view. So if I'm looking at a piece of legislation and it benefits the rich, I might not vote for that legislation because I don't know if I'm rich or not. Maybe I'm poor. Maybe it doesn't benefit me. Maybe it actually harms me in some way. So we can take a look at something with unbiased eyes and say, will this benefit the most amount of people, or is it just going to benefit somebody specifically, which of those people I might not be a part of? The other part of it is these principles of justice, which state that the liberty principle talks about the expansive system of basic liberties, which is similar to our Constitution. The equal opportunity principle talks about non-discrimination laws, equal nutrition and health care provided to everybody, and equal access to quality education provided to everybody. And then the difference principle talks about where inequalities in wealth are only justifiable when they benefit the least well off. And this together is his property owning democracy, because that's what they call it. My argument for this, of whether it's a good political philosophy or not, starts off with, I think there's a need to protect the rights of less fortunate citizens, and some political philosophies do that well. But I think that also needs to be balanced with the incentive for people to work hard and develop their talents to the fullest. And other political philosophies do that well. This is one of the few political philosophies I think that do both of those pretty decently. In this one, it promotes technological advances. Capitalism has taught us that compensation and competitiveness can provide many benefits, and you can have those same benefits on this, maybe not as many as capitalism, but some. To me, this kind of looks like a meritocracy, but with a higher floor and possibly lower ceiling. And the property owning democracy checks a lot of these boxes for me. The argument that I'm going to use with the veil of ignorance is the climate change. So some of the symptoms and problems of climate change are the intensification of the hydrological cycle. And what that will do is bring possibly drought, flooding, other unpredictable weather patterns, and other severe weather, more severe weather related issues like hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, those things. And the problem with climate change is that the cost and the benefit comes at different times. We're going to have to spend stuff now, like money, resources, time, to possibly see a benefit in the future. So the real question is with climate change is, if we're somewhat uncertain of the future because there's not necessarily proof one way or the other, should we change our behaviors now for something that might not even happen in the future? I would argue that no one states that our emissions or the pollution that we put out is good for our planet. So the opponents of climate change say that it's not really affecting the planet currently, or there seems to be no current effect. However, that seems unlikely, and even if it's not currently affecting our planet negatively, it doesn't mean that we should continue with our course of action where we have more emissions and more pollution and things like that. So the real question to me is that if our future on this planet is worth giving up some resources currently, which is our money, our time, or other resources. So I believe when we apply the veil of ignorance to this argument, that we can apply it to time periods too. If we don't know anything about ourselves, that could be extended, I believe, under the way Rawls talks about things, to what time period we live in. So we may not know, or do we live in like now, or do we live in the future? And it doesn't seem to follow Rawls' principles to not consider how our actions will affect our future selves. So we should take into account any possible future selves when we're making an argument, the same way we should take into account whether we're rich or poor when using the veil of ignorance. So doing this, I think we'll come to the conclusion that it's better to spend resources now, time now, to clean up pollution and emissions before our children and their children suffer from our mistakes. And on that thought, I'm going to leave with a quote that I read recently that I really like. It says, it's a Greek proverb that says, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they never shall sit in." And to me, that sums up this argument.